Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, May 9th, 2022. The time is now 6:30 p.m. If you could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Russ Wheatley was a lifelong resident of Abington. He conducted his surveying and engineering business in the town for over 40 years. He participated in many projects for the town over the years, working with Highway Superintendents Norbert Fredette, Richard Burns, and Keenan Connell on the Abington Center and North Abington Center improvements projects, Lincoln Street and Hancock Street sidewalk projects, Lincoln Boulevard layout, and Glenowitz Way layout. He was also involved in other town projects, the John B. Riley track and soccer field, the new Memorial baseball field, lights at the Memorial Field, the Nisbee Bandstand, Abington Girls softball fields, the Griffin's Farm project, and the Abington Senior Center. Russ was an accomplished photographer and served on the Tricentennial Committee, providing many of the photographs in the 300th commemorative book. He was also a member of the Mount Vernon Cemetery Committee and a judge for the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade. Russ founded an art scholarship, which is given every year to a graduating high school senior. He was a devoted husband of Phyllis Philbrick of Nashua, New Hampshire. He was an author, writing a book of memoirs about his experiences growing up in Abington, and was an avid golfer. Russ Wheatley was widely recognized for his professionalism, his calm demeanor, and his commitment to the town of Abington. He was a true gentleman and a true Abingtonian. Thank you. All right, so I will hand over the meeting to the town manager for reorganization of the board.
At this time, I'd like to take any nominations for chairman.
Scott, before we make any nominations, it's my understanding that it's an unwritten tradition that for the Abington Board of Selectmen that we rotate our leadership, and I'm understanding that serving. Previously on the Board of Health, I also understand the necessary need for consistency, especially in difficult, challenging times. When I was serving on the Board of Health, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and we were continuing to do the good work that we were doing. Not to say that anyone else couldn't, but we were able to keep on the same message and work with the health department, doing great things and keeping Abington really safe. And seeing that what is coming down our pike right now, I think would be good for us to keep some consistency for the Board of Selectmen, seeing that we're dealing with potentially with Center School, North School eventually, our trash situation, the water with the Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks. And I also understand that even just being on the Board of Health in the vice chairmanship for the time that I was, understanding that a lot of it is a learning curve the first year. With that being said, I've not always agreed on everything that the Chairman Damasio has said and done, but I think he runs a clean meeting, and I would support keeping Kevin Damasio for one more year as chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And with that being said, I'll make a motion to make Kevin Damasio chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Anybody want to second that motion?
I will second for the sake of discussion.
Then discuss.
Kevin, would you accept if you voted?
I I think I'd like to come off as chair. I'll do whatever the board's will, but I appreciate, the vote of confidence, and I appreciate my time up here, but, whatever the board decides.
Should we take see if there's a motion for another, or anybody want a motion for anybody else?
I'll motion for Alex Bezanson.
Do we have a second on that?
And again, I'll second for the sake of discussion.
Alex, would you accept if you were?
I would.
Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? Seeing as how, does it matter how we take the vote? Seeing as how Kevin's not interested?
He said he'd accept if he's voted, so we should just treat it as a...
All right, so we have a motion for Kevin Damasio. So, how do you vote?
Scott, I vote aye.
I vote nay.
No.
No.
Yes.
And on our second motion, how do we vote?
Scott, I vote no.
Yay?
Yes.
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 So be it. You're the new chairman. The meeting is yours.
Thanks.
Now you need a vice chair.
Before I do that, I just want to make a quick statement. I appreciate the vote. And this board, and I totally understand what Alex is saying, this board has shown over the last year or 2 years that we click is the word that I'm hearing out on the street. We've made a lot of good decisions. We don't always agree on everything, but we always put the town first, whether some people in town believe that or not. I firmly believe that everyone on this board puts the town first. So I appreciate your confidence in me, and I do have big shoes to fill with Kevin and Tim from the previous year, but with your help, I'm sure we can do that. So with that, I would open to nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Kevin Damasio for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second for the sake of discussion.
Any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Mike Kaloji for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll do it the same way. For Kevin Damasio, Alex,
Aye.
Mike,
No.
Kevin,
Yes.
Tim?
No.
And the chair votes no. For Mike Kaloji, Alex,
Aye.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Congratulations, Michael.
Thanks.
Musical chairs is right.
Slide that down, get another one.
Thank God he left the gavel.
It's just a practice. So you all have our agenda. We're going to do public announcements and public comment, and then we're going to just rearrange the agenda a little bit. But are there any public announcements, Alex?
Mr. Chairman, you know I always have public announcements.
Yeah, I know.
I'll try to keep it short. Okay. Learn how to engage with our youth about the dangers of underage drinking and substance use. The Abington Health Department will be hosting an educational event this Wednesday, May 11th, at 7:15 at the Abington Public Library to discuss how parents and caregivers can start the conversation to engage with young people about the dangers of underage drinking and drug use. During this event, supported by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's Talk, They Hear You campaign, we will share information, materials, and personnel stories aimed at providing easy and actionable guidance. Research suggests that one of the most important factors in healthy child development is a strong and open relationship with a parent or trusted caregiver. In fact, over 80% of young people ages 10 to 18 say their parents are the leading influence on their decision about whether to drink alcohol. People in every state are affected, prompting teachers, parents, caregivers, and medical health and public safety professionals to work together to tackle this emergency. If you are interested in learning more about the event, please contact the Abington Health Department at 781-982-2119, and you can also go to the event link, Talk, They Hear You, on the Abington Health Department Facebook page. It's also on my Alex Haggerty Abington Selectmen page as well. And my last public announcement is kind of just giving an overview for the residents. I know a lot were asking about the center school reuse discussion from April 27th. We had almost 50 people on the Zoom call, plus 70 people here in the Cotter room for the discussion. I want to give a huge shout out to our Assistant Town Planner, Liz Shea, and Scott Lambiase, our town manager, for putting it all together so we could hear from the Barrett Planning Group and the Mass Development to hear about what is the status of the center school property and what hypothetically we could do with the property. It was definitely a great discussion, and I just wanted to give the town a little bit an overview of what was discussed and the consensus that we got from residents. Number one, save the Murphy Field and the beautiful forests and walking paths. Throughout the discussion, they showed how large the forest area is at Center School, and it was beautiful, the aerial view. And that was practically, actually, I think that was unanimous, wasn't it, Scott?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then another unanimous was preserve the playground, keep the footprint of the property, take into account traffic flow, so whatever we decide what we want to do with the property, make sure we take into account the traffic flow. I'm sure people on Route 18, Walnut Street, Thaxter Ave, Summer Street, Progress Street will definitely appreciate it. Observe the structure of the historical building so that we could possibly reuse it. That's something that we're looking into now. That was one thing. If we decide to build anything on the property, only use the center school building and see if the good bones are still there with it. I'm trying to think of those. And especially considering that it is a historical building. If anyone who graduated from the Center and North School, there's a plaque when you walk in that it's dedicated to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because it was built under his administration as part of, I think it was the New Deal. I could be wrong. Fact check me on that one. And then affordable, and then as it for the building, affordable senior housing was the largest consensus of what residents wanted to see used on the property. We also heard for recreational use as well. I think we'll take that all into account, but it was a huge consensus that affordable senior housing, key word affordable. But no, it was a great discussion that we had. A huge shout out to Scott and Liz again for putting it all together, and all the residents who participated. I think the Board of Selectmen, we've got some work ahead of us and see what we can do for Center School. And end on a high note, so that's all I have for announcements, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alex. Who do we got now? Kevin?
All right. This Saturday, the second Saturday in May, which is May 14th, there's a letter carriers food drive. So if you happen to see any bags out by people's mailboxes, that's what they're doing. If you would put any of your non-perishable donations in a bag by your mailbox, the local post office will pick it up and deliver it to a local food bank. That's this Saturday, May 14th. Just one other, I just want to, just quickly, I didn't write anything down tonight, but I just want the town to kind of recognize our first responders over the weekend. In the last week, if you will, they had a stretch, I think, of 48 hours. It was just unbelievable. And, getting help from surrounding towns, just anything that could have happened in that time. So I just want to, give a shout out to the fire, the police, all first responders. The DPW got called in for a telephone pole. It doesn't go unnoticed. Again, you're getting called in from home, you're working overtime, you're getting stuck. I get it, I understand. I work at the jail. Same thing happens down there. So definitely want to just let everyone know it doesn't go unnoticed. The town appreciates it. I know this board appreciates it. Support our local first responders in every way that we can. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Tim?
Yeah, just one. The Abington Middle School Drama Club is presenting their production, We Are All Made of Stars, this upcoming Friday, May 13th at 7 p.m. and Saturday, May 14th at 2 p.m. Tickets are going to be $10. They're sold at the door. And according to the music teacher, the show is inspired by the students themselves, taking the best performing talents of Abington Middle School students and putting them front and center on the stage. I know they've all been working really hard over the past few months for it, so come on, support them.
Mike?
Yeah, just one, and to touch on what Alex was talking about, our Affordable Housing Committee meeting is tomorrow night at 6:30. We did have somewhat of a slow start, some different members coming and going, but we are at the point where it's going to start picking up. So I urge people to come, be informed, figure out, see what, 6 o'clock, I'm sorry, 6 o'clock. Don't even know what time I'm supposed to be there.
Don't be
I
late.
apologize, 6 o'clock. Thank you, Ellen.
And where is that, right here?
And that's here at Town Hall.
You better
So
write that
I
down,
would-
Mike.
What?
Write that down, 6.
Yes, I did. But again, I urge people to start paying attention, start coming to meetings, read the minutes, whatever you can do, because it's going to start picking up. So that's all I have.
Thank you. The next is public comment. Anyone here have any public comment regarding an item on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. We are going to move this around a little bit, and number one, we will get an update from Union Point.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Kevin Donovan, I'm the Abington representative to the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. I'd like to acknowledge Tom Henderson, who's our chairman of the Redevelopment Authority, and one of the directors from Rockland, who I work very closely with. I think, as I've mentioned to you when I've been up here before, I think it's imperative that Abington and Rockland work together on the redevelopment of the Naval Air Station, and Tom and I and the other director from Rockland, Kelly McKinnon, work very close together. So with that, just to give you an overview, I've been keeping all of you updated on a regular basis as to the goings-on at the Naval Air Station, but I did want to, pardon my voice, my allergies are kicking in here. I did want to say that I was appointed in 2018 and reappointed a year later for a 3-year term, and I did notify the board that I did not wish to be reappointed when my term expires this coming August. So this will be my final report to the board, but I do think it's imperative that when you make an appointment for the replacement that's on the agenda tonight, this is no ordinary position. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's something that I'm going to need to work with the person that's appointed on a regular basis up till when I leave in August. So I wish you would keep that in mind. Just very briefly, just to rehash, the Naval Air Station closed in 1997. In 1998, there was legislation to form, at the time, the South Shore Tri-Town Development Corporation. At that point, I was town administrator in Rockland. Rockland Board of Selectmen appointed me as one of the first directors, and I worked with Jim Lavin, who was the Abington director, and then after Jim passed away, Chris Aiello went on, and then myself. So I'm the third director from Abington. And in 2014, the legislature revamped the entire authority of the base and kind of diminished its corporate authority in terms of being a municipal entity and relegated us more to a planning, zoning, conservation commission. But we did have still oversight as far as the appointment of a master developer. The current land at the Naval Air Station comprises of about 1,387 acres of former Navy land. There's 52 acres of Coast Guard property, 1 acre of it's FAA, the Doppler radar. So the total acreage is about 1,440 acres, of which 12% of that land, about 178 acres, is located in the town of Abington. Of that 178, roughly 44 is currently designated as open space, and the remaining roughly 135 acres are currently zoned commercial industrial. Of the entire property of the former Naval Air Station, we've been able to clean up, working with the Navy Department, most of it. There's only 75 acres remaining that has to be cleaned and transferred. Currently, there is a solicitation for the Coast Guard land that the General Services Administration has got out to sell the 52 acres that used to be Coast Guard housing, and that's going through its process now. When I was originally appointed to the Board of Directors in 2018, one of my goals was to look at, I retired out of there as the Chief Executive Officer. In 2010, we developed one of the first in the state, in the Commonwealth, a land assessment bond, because we didn't have the capital behind us. And we were able to float a $12.5 million bond at that point in time using the land as collateral. One of my goals when, when I went back on the board was to refinance the bond. And Tom and I were able to convince the rest of the directors that's something that we should do. We went out, it was a very comprehensive process. We had to bring together attorneys, finance, bond people, professionals. We actually met by Zoom, it was during the pandemic, beginning in July of 2020, every week until December, for 6 full months, every week, to go over how we were going to structure the whole thing. We did successfully go out on the market. We refinanced the $12.5 million, and we actually, by refinancing it, saved $4 million that we were able to build into the bond indenture to allow that money to come to us up front. So there is currently, because of that refinance, we have $4 million that's under, in a trust agreement with the trustee that's under the authority of the Southfield Redevelopment Authority for infrastructure work at the base. So that is something I think the board in and of itself is very proud of, that we were able to utilize, basically get something out of whole cloth and provide for that savings for future development at the base. During the course of time, and this is old news for you people, but more for the public consumption, there was a master developer that had been appointed that defaulted. And the board ended up taking action against the developer. They went into receivership. The collateral that was held by the developer's bonding agent, Washington Capital, they took the land back by foreclosure. So now we were working with the Washington Capital in terms of the remaining land. We went out through a solicitation process back in December of 2020, I believe it was, wasn't it? And we appointed a new master developer, Brookfield Properties, who's working with New England Development for the commercial end of things. They're going through their due diligence now. In fact, they will be coming out in a very short period of time to lay out what their vision is for the base, and they'll be starting to meet with communities. So I would suspect in the next couple of months, you will probably be hearing from them and wanting to come over and meet with the board in terms of what they view their thoughts are and how that would interact and how it would work within the town of Abington. Because Brookfield was appointed as the master developer, we've been able to work with them and secure an agreement that they will provide us some of our operating revenues. So we're able to get revenues from the new master developer based on bond payments that we have coming in and a district tax that's embodied in the legislation. We're able to make up a $2.5 million budget, from that standpoint. So lastly, there is Elstar, who was the former master developer, did own 330 acres of land that was outside of the land that Washington Capital had. We were able to take them into Superior Court, Norfolk Superior Court, as they owed us a considerable amount of money. We were able to obtain a $62.9 million judgment against Elstar based on the fact that they had failed. A part of that, about $19 million, was in damages, and the rest the judge awarded in legal damages to us. So we do have a lien against them. Whether we're ever going to collect that or not, I wouldn't hold my breath right now. But, in terms of everything that's been recorded at the Registry of Deeds, we are in first position to recoup any of the monies that we have there. So I can say that from the time that I was appointed, it was teetering. There was no question at all. We were wondering whether we were going to be able to be in existence. But since that point, we've been able to, through refinancing the bond, come up with our own money. We've been able to secure a revenue stream to augment our budget, and we've gone after the master developer and have secured them and received a judgment from the Superior Court against them. So we've got all those holes plugged now, and the only way to move forward now is forward. So we're hopeful that we will see development there. I've been involved in this in one fashion or another back when it started in 1998, when I was on the board and, working in Rockland, and then subsequently when I went to work over there. So it's been a long, long haul. And I know when you talk to some of the people that were involved in it in the beginning, there was grandiose plans that, obviously things have changed since that point in time. So they're going to have to come in, talk to the boards, talk to the selectmen, the planning board, and put on the table what it is the new developer thinks they want to do there, and then you're going to have to work it out in terms of, how that fits into the overall structure of the town. So with that said, I can't reiterate enough the need for Abington to work closely with the town of Rockland in that regard. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Other than that, thank you.
I think you've answered almost everything, but does the board have any questions?
I personally would just like to thank you, Kevin, for all you've done. I know it's not
Thank you.
easy, and
No.
it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you stepping up.
We do appreciate it,
Thanks,
and
Mark.
like you said, we've
And
been
everything you've helped accomplish.
Okay,
Yes,
receiving
thank you,
the
Kevin.
emails,
Thank you,
the
Kevin.
updates, and we do appreciate that.
very good.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
thank
Kevin,
you.
thank you for all your service to the town of Abington, too. Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is request for appointment to Southfield Redevelopment. And that was advertised, and it was advertised because, as Kevin said, that he wants to start working with the new appointee now to bring them up to date by August when Kevin's term is up. So according to Chapter 291, Section 9, Paragraph C, the town appointee shall have demonstrated expertise, and education and experience in one or more of the following areas: real estate development, housing, finance, planning, or engineering. And we only had one applicant, and he has experience, full-time experience in real estate management, development, sales, housing, finance, and planning. He's also experienced real estate engineer. Member, you all have his application. Nationally certified public housing manager, member of National State Local Board of Realtor, Mass Realtors Brokers License. So we do have a good applicant, so I would open it up to a motion if someone would like to make a motion.
What's that?
I'll make a motion to appoint Roger Woods to the Southfield Redevelopment Authority.
I'll second that.
I would like to word it that Roger is appointed at the expiration of Kevin's term,
All right.
with the
I'll
understanding that
change
he's going to be working with Kevin up through August.
through August, so we'll start in September,
Is August 1st.
August 1st, so I'll make a motion to appoint Roger Woods to the Southfield Redevelopment Authority effective August 1st for a 3-year term.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Woods. Thank you, Kevin Donovan. Would you like to say
I
anything?
just want to thank the board and assure you I will not lose Kevin's number.
Thank you.
It is an important piece of land, and we really can't sit and let it be empty for years and years and years. I mean, we have to do something. Weymouth's building, we're not building, you know, Abington, Rockland, whatever, we need to join together with the joint waterworks if there's something we can do on that avenue, but we really need to start building in Southfield or put something there. It's open land that's really gone nowhere.
And Kevin, what you were talking about collaborating with Rockland, I agree 100%. And actually, hopefully we can talk about that soon, because friendly with a couple of the selectmen in Rockland, and they would definitely like to work together and actually maybe even check out the land as well and stuff.
Well, it's my understanding Abington and Rockland jointly own the majority of the land by very, very little percentage, but we do. So we need to work together and start getting stuff developed in Abington and Rockland. So.
I can assure you, under working with Kevin over the last 3 years when he took over chairman, his expertise, his knowledge, it's unbelievable, and it's been a great guide to me and the board as a whole. And there's a great relationship between Rockland and Abington.
There is,
It's a long-standing relationship that exists there. Going back to Chris Aiello, Chris was a great partner working over there. So we look forward to, Rockland and Abington continue working together. So by all means,
Definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, Roger, thank you for,
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item would be the presentation from the town's financial auditors. Oh, yeah, why don't we just do, I'm sorry, let's just do the other appointment real quick. Okay. That's listed as number 7 on our agenda. Request for appointment to the Abington Arts Council, Eileen Walls. Is she here? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Go ahead.
I proudly do this. She was my 7th grade geography teacher. I would like to appoint Eileen Walls to the Abington Cultural Council.
Is there a
Seconded.
second? Second, McKevin. Any discussion?
Just want to say she lives right around the corner from me. Her and her husband are great people. She's always out walking. She'll be a great addition.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
thank you, Eileen Walls, for stepping up and volunteering.
And while we're on appointments, this board will reappoint all the committees and commissions or whatever in June, as we do every year. And if you're interested in applying for a position, it's on the website now. So please go there, and all the positions are there available. We'd like to get some people to apply for them all. And don't think if you don't have experience you can't do it. We have a lot of good members already on the boards that will gladly teach you. So we need volunteers. Please reach out. And if you can't find it on the website, call the Selectmen's office. Thanks. So now, with that, we will bring up Craig Peacock from Powers & Sullivan, LLC. They're the certified public accountants that did the annual review.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your time and having me here tonight. As mentioned, we're here to talk about the fiscal 21 financial reports, of which there are 3 reports that make that up. They're the financial statements, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which is a report that just quantifies the federal dollars, federal grant fund dollars spent in fiscal 21, and then the management letter. What I'd like to start by saying is just I'll give a quick overview for the board of kind of what we do as part of the audit, and then kind of maybe stay at a macro level to give you an overview of the reports, and then more than willing to drill down if anyone has any more specific questions. We come in at various times of the year. We come in before June 30, before year end, as well as subsequent to year end when the bulk of the work is done. Previous to June 30th, we get to work with the school department a lot in looking at the federal grants that need to be audited. We're able to work with accounting and treasury on looking at long and short-term debt, receivables, cash. Essentially, what the audit is required to do is we go right down what I would call the balance sheet of the town of Abington, and we essentially look to support each and every figure on the town's general ledger with third party or other departmental type support to make sure that reconciliations are occurring, that cash balances are properly reported, that your debt numbers tie into external third parties and that type of thing. So essentially that's kind of the crust of what we do. We go right through everything. The financial statements for the town of Abington this year received an unmodified opinion, which is the best that the town can receive. That's what you'd be looking for. It was a little bit of a transition year this year. We worked with Andrew a little bit, new town accountant, because he was in as the audit was going along. Also worked with your current finance director, treasurer, collector. And, I would say things went very well. I know we called Andrew many times with lots of questions of which he was not here for, the bulk of the fiscal year, but everybody's responses were timely. The information we received up front was accurate and supported the balances. I'd like to just make one comment. The timeliness as auditors is really important because sometimes we can go to clients and you ask for support to a particular balance. And regardless of the department you're working with, it could become 3 days before they can get you, substantiation to that balance. And as auditors, it kind of throws up that professional skepticism antennas, if you will, that is this information and/or the recons occurring timeliness, or is someone in the last 3 days hurrying up to put it together? I'd like to say that everything we requested was provided timely and was accurate and essentially supported the balances that we were looking to support within the general ledger. You'll see when we get to the management letter that the town did not receive what we call any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, which is great. That means that essentially internal controls are operating as designed. Where auditors, there's always a little something that goes into the management that kind of help efficiencies and effectiveness, but there was no major holes that caused us to elevate anything to a material weakness or significant deficiency. The newest thing that you'll see in this year's financials, which isn't all that material, but it's a new GASB, GASB 84, and in previous financials, out in the fiduciary section, there was what we call an agency fund. It was dollars that really can't be used for town programs. They were held on behalf of things like student activity funds, things like that. GASB 84 now required those to be reallocated into what we call special revenue / non-major funds in the financial statements. So it caused a beginning balance revision, if anyone happened to have catch that footnote, of about $58,000. It's really, it's not a reflection of an error, something that didn't occur. It was simply the new GASB that said we have to take it from this column and move it into this column, and so that in itself brings upon the revision. We all know that the last couple of years, as a whole nation, we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic, and there's various buckets of money that the federal government has been sending out to the states, and then through the states to the communities to help. The town of Abington received their first allotment of what we call ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, during fiscal 21, which was about 870 grand, which was equal to about half of the local share. And then there's an additional up to $3 million available through Plymouth County, depending on what projects and such the town has going on. OPEB, other post-employment benefits. That's one we've talked about for many, many years in every community we go to. This year, the liability on the books recorded is $94.6 million, an increase of about $14 million over the previous actuarial valuation, which are done every 2 years. So it's gone up about $14 million for fiscal 21. The main driving factors of that is because the liability of the town is upwards of, in excess of 90 million. Currently, the town has about $275,000 put aside in an OPEB trust, and we'll see when we get to the management letter. A comment that we've been presenting is that we would like to see the town take the funds in OPEB and invest them as opposed to leave them in a bank account and try to earn a little bit more, on those investments. But at the same time, because the 275 grand is de minimis when you look at a $90 million liability, and we haven't, as a town, been putting money into the trust fund each and every year, the actuary is then required to decrease their discount rate, which went from 2.75 to 2.25 for this new valuation. And it's only 0.5%, but when we're talking numbers that are exceeding 90 million, 0.5% easily makes a $14 million adjustment in that liability, or increase, if I may. Next largest liability that's on the books is our net pension liability, GASB 68. This year, the town is part of Plymouth County, and what we saw across the board is that retirement systems have a little bit more leeway in the type of investments that they can invest in. They're not as confined as your local treasurer, if you will, for good reason, but also what we saw for, and again, retirement systems are on a calendar year. So for Plymouth County now, we're reporting as of December 31, 2020. We have a $21 million, the town of Abington has a $21 million liability recorded in the financial statements, which is just about a $4 million decrease from last year. Reason for the decrease is that Plymouth County saw great investment performance during the calendar year 1/1 to 12/31/20, which increased the asset base, which essentially decreases the liability allocated to all the members of Plymouth County. When we look at the general fund, most important fund realistically of the town saw a net budgetary increase this year of about $820,000. When I look back about 5 years in preparing my notes, and very consistent with most of our communities, but some years we see an increase budgetarily, other years a decrease. This year we saw, again, some really strong collections across the board. About a 97% first year real estate, personal property collection rate, which is great, as well as due to the fact, and we've seen this in many of our clients for fiscal 21, due to the fact of all the various COVID-related grants that were received, there were various expenditures that were able to be allocated to those grants, and it left some room in the general budget, which ultimately got turned back. So We came in about 1.8% lower on expenditures this year in our general fund budget, and that equaled just about 440 grand after encumbrances and article carry forwards that also got turned back. I guess if I had to say, the biggest thing that I see with the town's budget, if you look over, we'll call it a 5-year history, the town's fund balance, mainly the general fund, has been relatively consistent, what I would say. Some years, again, you drop money to the bottom line, other years you don't. I think the biggest factor that has not allowed the balance to increase has been the town's reliance on free cash to balance the budget each year. There's generally 600 to $1.4 million or so used each year. Again, whether we actually dip into our pocket and uses it depends on how our revenue collections and appropriations go for the year. But that, I think, if the town continues to utilize, let's just make an easy math, and we'll meet in the middle and call it $1 million or so of free cash available funds to balance our budget, you will start to see your general fund, fund balance decrease over time. Currently, the town issued about $2.1 million worth of long-term bonds during fiscal 21 for various projects. Over the last 4 years, there hasn't been a lot of long-term debt issued. So our long-term debt principal and interest is about 7% of overall budget, which is relatively healthy. We pretty much consider it. We work with Moody's and Standard & Poor's quite often to look at what ratios they look at and how do they determine upticks in bond ratings and that type of thing. They generally will consider anything under 10% relatively, on target, depending on the whole budgetary, outlook of the community. And we've talked about OPEB. The town has about a general stabilization fund, which, again, hasn't been a lot of money put into it over the last couple of years, but we're over $3 million, so we're earning, $10,000, $15,000 of investment income on that each year, and we're not dipping into it to use it, so it is building up, so that's a plus. In summary on the financials, when we look at your enterprise funds, of which water, sewer, golf, and cable access, they're pretty much acting as designed. A enterprise fund user fee and fee structure is essentially supposed to be able to substantiate operating and capital costs of that particular fund, and for the most part, that's what we see occurring. Cable access went up a little bit more this year than last year, being fiscal 20, but again, that particular enterprise was originated in fiscal 20, so this was its first full fiscal year. And realistically, in a nutshell, the audit went very well. Again, the outcome of the financials this year was very positive. Dropping $820,000 to the bottom line in the general fund is great. I think the town just wants to keep in mind budgetarily going forward, are we able to, I don't want to say increase fees, but just where are areas that maybe we can generate some other revenues to maintain our level of appropriations without always having to dip into our pocket, if at all possible. I can move on to the other two reports unless anybody has any questions on the financials.
For OPEB, what are other communities doing, dealing with the situation?
So I'll be completely honest with you. It varies significantly across the state. I have one or two large cities, let's say, that maybe have more at their disposal, that have upwards of $50 million put aside. We have some communities smaller than Abington that are not even putting any money aside just yet. So what we've seen in working with Moody's and Standard & Poor's, if we tick back 3 to 5 years, they weren't really looking at the OPEB trust because there's no mandate to fund OPEB currently like there is for the retirement system. So it's, if we have available and the ability to fund it, communities are doing so. But we are seeing anything from a zero contribution to $1 million contribution per year across the state of Massachusetts. What the rating agencies are saying is that now they're starting to give it a little bit more look when it comes to determining, can the community get an uptick? What they'll now do is say, okay, the town of Abington is doing X and has X put away. They'll look at the various, your peers, the various communities in your area and say, is Abington the only one not doing something in their peer group? Or are they doing just as well as the others? And they're kind of looking at that a little bit more than they used to in determining an uptick on the bond rating or not. What also, lastly on that one, is what many communities are saying is once, and actuaries can work with this as well, if in fact what most communities that we see doing in this particular is they'll have the board vote, and once the pension plan is funded, they're voting to say we're going to allocate X percent up to 100% of that pension appropriation to the OPEB trust and try to combat the liability that way. As auditors, in working with the state and the GASB, someday I think there will be a mandate to fund OPEB. It's just not there yet. And the liability numbers are all over the place. There's, communities are negotiating with unions on percentage splits of health care later on. They're negotiating, they're trying any which way they can to control healthcare costs and such to try to mitigate OPEB, which is essentially the elephant in the room for the last number of years.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, seeing that, I'll move on to the report on schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which is a pretty quick one. Again, that report summarizes what the town of Abington has spent on federal dollars in fiscal 21. For fiscal 20, there was about $1.3 million. In fiscal 21, we have $4.2 million of expenditures. Again, the result of that $3 million increase are the COVID-related grants because they are all federal dollars. Some may come funneled through state agencies and such, but they're ultimately federal dollars, and so we're required to audit based on a federal formula that we have to follow and determine what we consider a major program. I won't bore you with those details, but it's essentially programs that spend a certain amount of dollars. This year for the town of Abington, we had to audit what's called the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which equaled approximately 50% of the $4.2 million that were spent this year. Some other COVID-related, the school nutrition cluster received various COVID dollars to provide meals and that type of thing as schools were closed. I mentioned the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and then there's an ESSER program, elementary and secondary school emergency relief that assisted with school reopening and various things happening at the school. So those dollars were spent over at the school side. I'm happy to say that again in this report the town received an unmodified opinion and we had no findings or question costs. That means that the programs that we had to drill down and look at the actual federal requirements for those programs, all supporting documentation was provided, and the town dotted all their I's and crossed their T's in the performance and handling of those dollars. So that is a clean report. That leaves us with the management letter. The management letter coming into fiscal 21 had 3 open comments from last year. I can quickly summarize them if that
Please
works
do.
for the board. One of the comments coming into fiscal 21 related to the school obtaining an audit of their student activity funds, of which we understand that the school business office has hired, and that should be done by the end of fiscal 22. of which we'll ask for a copy and take a look at that and make sure. But so I'm assuming that that comment will be resolved in the next few months shortly. Other post-employment benefits trust, I kind of touched on that one as we were discussing the OPEB liability. We just recommend that as the town is building the trust, that you look into maybe investing those funds as opposed to just having them in a bank account. I will suggest that something to look into. In Plymouth County, there is a consortium of communities that is pooling funds and has someone that's overseeing. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's the only way to go, but it is one way to go if you wanted to look into that. I could provide your town manager with any information on other communities and such if you wanted to look into that, or at least I know that the town will be looking for a new treasurer collector, finance director in this near future, and when he or she is hired, I would like to see one of the priorities being, because I'll be honest, your treasurer collector's office runs pretty well. You've had some long-standing employees in there, reconciliations. There's the day-to-day operations as an auditor, I don't have an issue with. I walk in and I'm provided with what I need very readily and very real time. So if one of the ideas that I would like to see would be try to earn a little more money on your OPEB dollars, which again on $274,000, it's not going to significantly impact a $90 million liability right away, but everything helps and we have to start somewhere.
Is there requirements on what we can invest that in?
Well, because the town does not have their own retirement system, it's very similar to the requirements that the treasurer would have on the town's own assets. Communities that do have their own retirement system, you can vote to have the retirement board oversee those assets, which then allows them the leeway that a retirement system does have over local funds, if you will. So, but for the town, it would be pretty much standard quo under what the treasurer can invest town's funds in. Current year, we had 3 new comments. We just mentioned tailings. If for anyone quickly not familiar with tailings, it's just, let's just say a vendor warrant gets run, 100 checks get processed for various vendors, or whatever the town and departments are, goods or services. A check goes uncashed for, generally we start at 3 months and we go longer. So if it's been outstanding and not cashed for 3 months or greater, generally what we would expect is that the Treasury starts to follow the abandoned property laws, of which they do, and bring them into what we call an account called tailings. And all that is removing them from the outstanding checklist, which kind of makes the recon of cash a little bit more efficient, if you will. And then they move on to the town accountant's books into an account called tailings. And the town then has to follow the Massachusetts abandoned property laws, which is sometimes we've seen a posting in the newspaper. Craig Peacock, we have a check in the town of Abington for $100, so on and so forth. Once those rules are followed, after a period of time, I believe it ends at about a couple of years once you actually follow everything and do the proper solicitations looking for the people, the town's able to then void those checks and bring them in as miscellaneous revenue.
Do we have a lot of that?
Not a lot, not that some, not certain, 60 grand or so roughly between vendor and payroll of stuff that's been hanging around, some of which we saw cashed later on. So as of today, I couldn't quantify, but as of June 30th, it was in the $60,000 range, of which some have since cleared. Again, your town, your finance department is following the mass abandoned property laws. The nature of this comment was such that the accounting, when it gets to town accountant, what was happening is the previous town accountant was recording a miscellaneous revenue, and it kind of overstates the revenue. You really, all you have to do is debit a cash and bring it into a liability. There's really no P&L impact for that. It's already gone through the P&L. So we were just recommending updating the procedures for the recognition and recording of tailings within the general ledger. Bond premiums, both long and short-term debt, when the town does go out for bonding, depending on the rates and the way that that particular loan is structured, sometimes a premium is received. The Modern Municipalization Act of a few years back, premiums used to go into the general fund. They now have to go into a receipts reserved within the special revenue fund or be voted to be used for the particular project, which would reduce the amount that the community has to borrow for that fund, or that project, excuse me. We saw some small dollars that still went into the general fund. We worked with accounting and moved them out appropriately, but we just wanted to recommend or make accounting in the town aware that the premiums are no longer allowed to be recorded within the general fund. And lastly, again, I would say between both Treasury and Collection and your town accountant's office, reconciliations on the various types of receivables, your real, personal, motor vehicle, user fees, that type of thing. Reconciliations are occurring, and they are occurring timely. What we saw was that we all reconcile, maybe we all reconcile our own monthly checkbook, and you find outstanding checks, or maybe this got recorded as 1,000 when it was really 1,100. Some sort of an error, we'll call it, that needs to be adjusted. We like to see, as auditors, we like to see those reconciling items be adjusted timely, within the next month, if you will, before the next reconciliation cycle. And we noticed that there were, a fair amount of reconciling items that were being carried year to year and not being essentially researched, and or in most cases, it's probably an adjustment to the general ledger. Can't use that as a blanket statement. It could be on the collector's side, but essentially, as auditors, we feel that whatever the correcting entry is, whether it's the general ledger or on the collector's records, should be done timely, recorded, and be completed before the next monthly reconciliation. In summary, that's our 3 reports. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Does the board have any questions?
You answered mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hagerty?
Hello. Hi, Paul Haggerty, 515 Summer Street. Full disclosure, I'm a Finance Committee member. I'm here tonight as an individual, lifelong Abington resident, class of 82, Abington High School. Go Green Wave. You mentioned, Craig, the timeliness, and is there any way we could get more timely opinion from Powers and Sullivan? Because you issued the opinion in February, here we are in May, and it's like you're going to start your field work in June. Is there any way we could get, like, the audited financials? Is that an issue on your side, our side, combination?
May I ask, I'm not 100% sure I follow the question. So what happens is...
So our year end is 6/30.
It's year end is 6/30.
And we get an opinion in February.
Well, the audit generally doesn't occur until, October, November. And that's very common with many, because, most clients aren't even closed and ready to go until late August, September. And then, depending on the schedule and where the particular client falls, in this case, the town of Abington. And then what happens here quite often is Plymouth County, we need Plymouth County's audit to occur to get the, what we call a GASB 68 report in order to record the net pension liability. That generally is what we're waiting for. That generally doesn't happen until January, February. That's a calendar year, and so they usually, get that started January. Usually they shouldn't take too long, but the last couple of years, I hate to blame COVID for everything, but the last couple of years, what we've seen is that both auditors working with the regional retirement systems as well as the systems themselves have had a lot of backlog, and therefore the reports that we need to be able to finish the financials have not been available for 3 to 4 months after we've left the town's field work. And that's pretty much standard across the board for our clients at this point.
But you had indicated earlier that you start your field work in June.
Correct.
Right, for a 6:30.
Yes,
Then you do your field work in October and November?
correct.
And so what are you doing between July and September? Any work here?
No. That's the time that your finance team is closing the books, reconciling with departments, reconciling year-end
And
cash.
Scott, how long does it take to close the books for the town?
Uncle Freddie.
Andrew?
Do you mind stepping up to the mic just for the people at home, please?
And please introduce yourself. I'm sure this is the first time for some of them seeing you.
I'm Andrew Nocon. I'm the new town accountant. I started in October of last year. I used to work in Brockton in the auditing office. In general, closing the books does take a while. I know in Brockton we wouldn't get finished until midwinter, like early January or February, and get the report out in like May or March or April. Here, I think we're able to finally close around December and get working on the state reports and whatnot. So it does take a while. There's a lot of reconciliation and other reporting that we need to get done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I got a few other questions. As far as, is that something, though, that we could work on as far as closing the gap on how long it takes to close the books?
To what end? I mean, I guess my question is for what purpose are we trying to close the books faster?
Well, because you're now in a new fiscal year and you're working on last year's stuff. So,
I mean, you're referring,
no, I'm talking about, because you can't close you can't close the books until you're already into the new fiscal year. So wouldn't you want to close that stuff out, move on? I mean, I'm sure, Andrew, like you would like to close those out. It's not something that people want to do is carry over for another 4 or 5 months. I mean, you have clients that I'm sure that like a month after or even 2 weeks after, their books are closed. If it's a year-end 6/30 or 12/31, you're closing your books.
I have to, with all due respect, sir, have to mention that we have 0 clients that are done within a month.
Are you talking just municipal then? Because they're municipal.
All municipal, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yes, we are primarily a municipal firm, yes.
Right, but the idea of like just saying, oh, let's drag this out, like, nobody wants to do that, because it's like, you've got your current year. So now you're in 2 years.
yeah, I mean, there's certainly not an intention to drag it out on our part.
Oh, I get that. Right, I get that. Right, but it's sort of difficult to stand here and listen to management letter comments that are old, and the fact that also on the management letter comments, the OPEB, that's one that's, what I would like to see the Board of Selectmen do is, with the town manager, is put an action plan for all of these. I mean, that's how it used to work in public accounting before, like, when you issue a management letter comment, you used to wait for, like, what is the plan of action? You've done away with that now. So now they just issue it and hope everybody in good standing will take action on it. But I would like to see the town take these management letter comments and put a response to it to say, this is our plan of action. Because the OPEB trust one has been going on for, it's a prior year comment that keeps carrying over year after year. And Mr. Hagerty asked the question, well, that's great, but now what? What are you going to do about it?
Well, we have started to address that, and as you know, in the financial policies and some of the stuff, some of the conversations that I've had with the Finance Committee and with this committee, that, yeah, we absolutely want a dedicated supply or a dedicated revenue source to go towards OPEB, one of them being a piece of the pie of the monies that we'll be receiving from the cannabis facilities. So as those open up and as we start realizing that new revenue, there's a definite intention on at least the finance committee, the finance team, and I believe this board, there'll be a dedicated amount, a percentage of that that will specifically go towards OPEB.
Right, but are we gonna put it pen to paper and say, we're going to come up with a plan? Because
That's why, well, that is why that we issued the financial policies, to put them in those policies, and for, the finance committee and this committee to approve that. And now, if it also would require that's our action plan to answer the comment letter, I think that's a great idea too.
And just, as far as the liability goes, it's $94 million. And the longer we just drag this out, we're just kicking the can down and just making the next generation responsible for this. And I understand there's no plan for it, but you're looking down the road, like there's gonna be some requirement, like we have to start contributing towards it. And the different factors as far as the discount rate, if, in your report, it's like, if we go 100 basis points less, the debt now is about $114 million. It's over $110 million. And then we're not even taking into consideration the healthcare trend costs you put in there too. If that goes up, and with inflation and everything, we're looking at $114, $125 million debt on top of everything else we have in the town, and we don't have a plan for it. I'm not blaming you. You're just reporting the information. But when you leave the room, we will. But it's like, that's what I'm saying, like, the town really needs to come up with a plan, because, and on top of that, you get the pension liability. And the frustrating part is these management economies, they're prior year, and we just don't take any action. And I'm not blaming anybody, and there's no good solution. But we have to start doing something, because that $274,000 that's in the trust, that's a rounding error in this town, in this budget. It's like 0.29%. It's less than 1. It's a rounding error. And we have to just do something about it. And that's why it's like, having you here, I think it's great, but we have to do something about it, whether it's the selectmen, the town manager, the finance committee, whoever, but people really need to understand, this debt is big. And it's not getting any smaller, and we have to take some action, because otherwise we're just pushing it down onto the next generation. And
Well,
it's
I
like,
think,
what are we
like
going to do about
Scott
it?
said, I think, with our new town manager in the last couple of years, he's been working on a lot of these policies, and he is working with finance and this board to come up with a financial policy.
I think, yeah, I mean, he's been working with town council, with the boards, to create the policies and procedures. I mean, those are going to be an annual review. That's going to be the practice that we follow, the procedures we follow. I think Scott's done a great job. I mean, prior administrations and stuff, I agree. We need to do something about this, but I do feel Scott has taken that step and is working that way.
Yeah, and
I would
agree.
caution one thing though. I don't want to ever rush you in doing your job. I understand. I love to see it faster, if you will, too, but understand, I don't want you to rush through it, because then we could have errors as well, so just, keep that in mind.
No, I think this also taps into a little bit of previous meeting, I think, in February that I was talking about, in March, talking about setting priorities. What are our priorities for the town? Making sure. This definitely sounds like something that we do need to be getting our heads around, and I said making this as a priority is something that we need to work on.
And
Improve.
just to hit on that, Alex, Scott can attest to it. I mean, sitting down to doing the personnel evaluations, that was one of the very first priorities on Scott's list, was financial policies and procedures, and this, I mean, that's it in a nutshell, everything that was discussed tonight, so.
And when are these policies, financial policies, going to be finalized? Has the Board of Selectmen looked at them yet? They commented?
We've seen drafts here.
Yeah, and your board, I gave you the last draft, and you guys were going to comment on them also.
Right.
Has
But they're just
anything
the town of Duxbury's.
Well, they started off as the town of Duxbury, but I assure you that there's some changes that have been made to modify it to the town of Abington. but-
Scott, have we received any word from the Finance Committee on those policies and procedures? If not, then can you reach out tomorrow morning, reach out to the Finance Committee and get some updates for us to the board. Next meeting, let's address it.
Mr. Chairman, we have a question.
Chris?
I'm Chris Murphy, Chestnut Street. I'm on the Finance Committee.
How you doing?
We did get the, whatever they are, the
Draft
the
draft
finance
policies, procedures.
And they were good. We did deliver some comments before town meeting, but it was not, a priority to get that finalized. I assume now that we're into the summer, almost into the summer, we'll get those finalized. But we have delivered, and we have seen them and delivered some comments
Okay.
back.
I wish it was summer.
Yep.
The warm weather can't come soon enough. So Scott, we should really get those moving, if we could look at those for
agree.
next meeting possibly.
And one thing that you didn't touch on was the cybersecurity. That was a management letter comment, that was a carryover. So I would, if you could just explain to people at home what that is all about,
Yes.
please.
You know what, I'm not sure how I overlooked that one, but, so yes, there's one comment I overlooked, cybersecurity. And as we all know, the world right now, there's various, what I'll call hacking incidents going on, whether it's at your personal level, a small company, or even up at the governmental level. And I know that the town has been actively working, their IT department in the last couple of years, looking to obtain cybersecurity insurance, as well as looking for a firm to come in and do a cybersecurity review of the various workstations throughout town hall, passwords, the timeliness of changing them, all the various attributes, firewalls, and that type of thing. So as of the end of this particular fiscal year under audit, was everything put in paper and nailed down? No, but what I would say is I received much more info than I did in the past year, and I feel comfortable that the town is actively working and seeking out firms to assist in looking at the cybersecurity of the town and determining the best way to go with that.
So with that being said, we do not have any cybersecurity?
No, let me rephrase that. You don't, from what my understanding as of the moment in time, whether it's been done since the audit to now, cybersecurity insurance, which, covers certain incidences and stuff that happens. Your IT department is very active in making sure that town personnel are changing their passwords, that there's proper firewalls. I mean, even when us as auditors come in and we utilize the room downstairs, and our information is on our servers back, we spend an hour with the IT gentleman to make sure the proper passwords are here and that the information coming through. And so he's definitely going through protocols, in my opinion, to keep things as tight as possible. But yes, cybersecurity is something that is not a stagnant topic. It's changing each and every week or month, and clearly every year. And it's made to now address issues that are occurring, potential issues, and so there's always the cybersecurity industry, the IT industry, can never, what I would call, sleep, if you will, or say that we're done. We've put a plan together and then we're done. Just as the board just referred to the financial policies, and Select Board Member DiMaggio mentioned that they will be reviewed each and every year. A cybersecurity plan realistically needs to be reviewed almost each and every year because the things are changing each and every day, the threats from the outside. And yes, again, the town, I think, has been pretty good, and now we're just seeing more and more of it occurring, and so we recommend kind of enhancing the policy and looking into the insurance and that type of stuff, of which I know the town has been actively looking into.
That should be another policy procedure that's through that annual review. Just for the residents out in TV land, abingtonma.gov, if you click up top on departments, click on accounting, this report that we're going through tonight is on there, and they also have last year. They have FY20 audited financial statements and FY21 and some other documents if you want to go look at that. abingtonma.gov. Click on up top on the link on the navigation bar, and click on departments, click on accounting.
Sure.
Just another brief update on the timeliness portion. When I came aboard, I started doing a lot of automation work to generate the Schedule A and the balance sheet, which are two of the reports that we have to do every year. So I built that from scratch. At Brockton, I'd been on the Munis system, and the town of Abington uses a Vadar, which is completely different. So I built that all, and next year it should be a lot faster, because I can just dump in the data, and the report should generate automatically. So that should help a lot next year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
If I can just put a plug in for whoever's setting priorities for this town, as far as to give Wayne Norling, IT department, some help. He's a one-man band here. He's a single point of failure. We're not getting cyber insurance. It's not going to happen. It's like the hoops you have to jump through now to try to get it. We're not going to get it. But when Wayne is we've had ransomware on multiple occasions here, and he just kind of goes into his mode and just does what he has to. That's not a good way to go, because there could be that time where it's like it's a 0-day thing and he can't deal with it. And we need to, whoever it is setting the priorities, whether it's a board of selectmen, it's the town manager, the finance committee, collectively, we need to give Wayne some help. He's a single point of failure, and this is not going away. And the fact that we have this one person here handling the entire network for the town. School department's different, but there's really no coordination between the school department and the town on that. I just want to put a plug in, whoever can do that, like to help him and get this assessment done. Because we don't really know what our exposure is. And we do deal with PI, and we've got a payroll system that is so old that's sitting on a standalone computer, is my understanding. And it's like we need to deal with things and move him forward. But the cybersecurity area is something that it's daily that we're dealing with this stuff. And whatever we can do, I know Wayne had put in for next year a person. We need to make sure that happens. I appreciate all the time, but I do have to say my last thing here, and I appreciate you giving me the time for this, but we can talk about policies and procedures all we want. We have to take some action on this stuff, because this liability is not getting any smaller. I mean, we've put $4,000 into this trust fund in the last 3 or 4 years. We need to do better than that. And we need to come up with a plan. But it's not going to be easy, because to fund this, we're going to have to take resources from something else. But I don't want to, put this liability on the next generation or the generation after that, because this is not going anywhere. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for me?
Any other question? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, why don't we do the request for the approval of the Founder's Day 5K?
I will make a motion to approve the request for approval of Founder's Day 5K road race on June 11th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And vote to approve the minutes on April 25th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So Kevin, how are we going to do the manager's annual performance review?
I can just summarize.
Bring Jamie in?
What's that?
Yeah, so here's what I would like to do.
Do you want to?
If we're going to go into executive session, do we do the manager's review first?
Yeah, we don't have to. I mean, I think if Jamie could in on, like,
But Jamie's here.
Mr. Chairman, if we do go into executive session, would we want to, recommend doing the town manager.
Well,
report.
that's what I'm trying to get at. Should we do everything and then just go in executive session and not
Yeah.
reconvene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So,
Yeah,
is the town manager's annual review in public?
That's
Yes.
Open session.
That's open session.
So Kevin, why don't you go over that then?
Yeah, it's just brief, I don't have to say too much on it, but the town manager's annual review was conducted. Collected all the reports, reviewed them all. Scott has had the chance to review them as well. He met individually with the Board of Selectmen. Again, goals and objectives, went over other things from the previous year and current year coming up. Overall, favorable review for the town manager.
Did we come up with goals and objectives? Are we going to go over that at a future meeting, or do we compile, like, because I know there was a spot on that. You received 5 reviews, right?
Yeah.
I think what we've typically done is somewhere around June or so, we've always had a discussion on goals and objectives.
Okay.
I'd like to see the town manager take the goals and objectives from all of us now and you know, then kind of maybe
Compile
present
it
back
with-
to us.
with
Yeah.
his, and then give us a report on that like you've done.
Next month?
Probably the first meeting in June, maybe.
And you
Yeah.
you received a review from all 5 members of the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Okay. And so will Scott receive all of our, I know me and you went over mine.
Yep.
I don't know if you did that with everybody.
I did.
Yes, yep.
Everyone. yeah.
Almost everyone.
So is there anything else to add to that, Kevin, or is that pretty much it?
No, that's it.
Okay. So why don't we do the town manager's report next, and we'll go into executive session? Okay.
Okay, so it's actually fairly brief. So on right around May 26th, we'll be approaching one-year anniversary for the opening of Bud's Emporium. The host community agreement under which Bud's operates requires them to make a series of payments to the town after the first year. First payment will be a $10,000 payment for the purposes of funding substance abuse and mental health services in the town. This can include things like the school substance abuse counseling or paying for police officer training for advanced roadside impairment enforcement. A second payment of $5,000 is to be donated to a charity of the selectmen's choosing. It's important to note that we made some slight modifications to this provision in subsequent host community agreements. In the ones that I had approved, the change will allow the organizations to actually choose themselves the local charity and just let the selectmen know or allow the selectmen to approve of it. This was done for the purposes of avoiding any conflicts of interest or appeared conflicts by the selectmen. However, in this instance, you must decide as a board who you want the payment to go to. For example, it could be, Abington Food Pantry, Boys and Girls Club.
Abington Copes.
Abington Copes, yeah. Certainly, I think collectively, you guys will have to have that discussion.
And when do we do that?
I would like you to do it probably at the next meeting as an agenda item.
So the next meeting will be May 23rd.
And then the final payment is the community impact fee. This is 3% of the gross profits. This year's fee is estimated to be just under $300,000. That'll go into the general fund. This is in addition to the nearly $300,000 that we've already collected from the state assessment. So as you can see, we're doing it's a very nice new revenue source.
And that's
for the
only
town.
one
Correct.
facility open.
At this time, we've only have one open. There are several that are in various states of permitting, and one that's actually in construction. I met with the Open Space Committee last week for the purposes of discussing the open space plan update and the possibility of placing 50 parcels of land on Diane Circle and Jeremiah Sullivan Drive into the care and custody of the Conservation Commission for the purpose of open space and recreation. I think you guys have a handout. I've reached out to KP Law just on some clarification on the process. I think this probably will be something that goes to town meeting, but I think it will also start with a recommendation from this board and then from Conservation, and then it will end up as a town meeting article. These properties are in this area is actually a great area for walking. Great, almost the trails are pretty much already there. And it would just be a nice area. I think the Open Space Committee would like to see us put some sort of a, as they call it, a town forest or something there. In cooperation with Attorney Kenny, who's here, of Clifford and Kenny, we're going to schedule a new training session for all board and committee members. The session will include a brief review of the open meeting law requirements, what it means to be on a board and committee, rules of civility, how to conduct a meeting in a civil and gracious manner, as well as how to de-escalate should a meeting turn confrontational. The meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 21st, 6:30 p.m. Location to be determined. I'm hoping to use the senior center again, just checking to see if it's going to be available for us. Speaking of the senior center, I'd like to thank Representative Ellison Sullivan. She's been instrumental in securing yet another earmark for the town of Abington. We're slated to receive $25,000 to help defray the cost of purchasing and installing a new backup generator for the senior center. You know, we've used that as a heating and cooling center, a charging center, and other things. So right now, the generator there only does a portion of the building. It'd be nice, our plan is to have that so it's a fully functional building in times of emergency. Also coming out of the state, MassDOT has announced that the town will be receiving an additional $201,000 in Chapter 90 funds, go towards damages from last year's winter. A representative of the town's landfill, our landfill consulting firm, Sanborn Head. We're going to have a representative here for your meeting on June 27th to give this board a brief update and history of the landfill in anticipation of the RFP for closure services going out to bid. So they'll be working with me on putting that together and then kind of discussing it with this board and just laying out what it means. And I'm working with individual departments on fee reviews. It appears some departments have not updated their fees in several years. Currently, starting with the building department, Marion has done a lot of work, they all have down there putting together some comp fees, and I will get those schedules out to you this week for your review, and we'll have it on the agenda for your either approval or not approval at your next meeting. And then this Wednesday, Wednesday the 11th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., we're going to be having just a town employee appreciation picnic out in the parking lot, sort of a potluck. We'll be saying goodbye to Sonia Hodge, who's going to be leaving us. During this, we'll be...
I'm sorry, what, Wednesday?
The 11th,
Yeah.
from 11 to 1.
11 to 1,
Yep.
thank you.
And so if you're around, please feel free to stop by. All offices will remain open. We're not closing anything down, but we'll be shuffling the employees through there to have a chance to say goodbye and just to tell them how much we appreciate them. And that's it.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, is there anything else before we vote to go into executive session? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to enter executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23B, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and not to return to public session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Alex? Roll call. Yeah. Kevin?
Aye.
Tim?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we are now in executive session. Unfortunately, everyone here has to leave. And we will not reconvene.